Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 4 video. After I recorded my expansion video, I realized that I haven't really talked about the UI in Dominions 4. So hopefully you'll actually be seeing this video before you watch my expansion video. I'll be placing it higher in the playlist and all that, but the expansion video has already been uploaded right now when I'm recording this. The UI in Dominions is a little archaic, I guess. A lot of people criticize it for being hard to get used to and not being very good. I never really had any problems with it when I first started playing, but I do want to go over it and make sure that you know all the basics of how to actually control your nation in the game and don't have to spend all your time Googling weird specific problems. The manual for the game has a pretty good explanation. In fact, it has fairly decent explanations of all the basics of how to play the game in terms of how to actually control your units and how to actually create a pretender, but it doesn't talk about what is good and what good strategy is and that kind of thing. So most of my content is going to be focused not on the basics of like what is income, what are supplies, you know, what is a normal amount of hit points for this type of unit, but rather like why is this good? What makes stuff strong? How does the combat work, and how can you exploit that to do better? You know, stuff that's more about strategy and winning multiplayer games and learning to play the game well and giving yourself more options for how you play the game. But we're going to go over the UI a little bit here, and I'm probably going to cover unit stats next and put that in above my expansion video as well. So, oh man, where to start? It's kind of hard to know coming into this as someone who's had years of experience in the game, and I've kind of forgotten what's hard to understand when you first get started. Let's go from the top left and work our way around the user interface here. So right here we've got a bit of information about the province we have selected. Say if we toggle one of these other independent provinces, we don't know what's on them yet because this is the first turn of this game that I've started as an example. We know the names of the adjacent provinces and their province number right here. Province number is useful because what is it? Shift. You know, there's some like shift command or control command that honestly I can't even remember anymore, like control shift M or control M. Yeah, see, there's some things in this game even I can't remember. I usually just Google it every time I need to look up a province, but there's some command to let you type in the number of a province and it'll take you straight to that, which is pretty handy when you're discussing diplomacy with other players in the game. Most people, I like to use the names of the provinces, but most people actually don't do that I've played with. They usually go by, you know, oh, well, province 86 over here, that's our border, so I don't want you to take that, yada, yada, yada. So it's useful to be able to look that up occasionally, but more helpful to you every turn when you're playing the game is going to be the actual information you get on provinces. Let's go to the next turn really quick here. So we're going to have more information on these neighboring provinces as well, right? So you can see here, these are the scales that are currently affecting the province. The scales on my capital here are the scales I've chosen. I've got, you know, you start with your base scales on your capital immediately, and these are the scales I've selected for this nation. This is the type of province. This is a waste, which is, this is a terrible start, but that's irrelevant. That's the type of the province. You can see over here, this is a forest. It has some information at the bottom of the screen. If you look down there, there's a tooltip that's going to tell you a little bit about forests. You can look over here and you see mountains. It's got low income, excellent resources, hinders movement. If you look, where's a city? Here we go. This is a farmland. They're also known as like the city provinces. Typically on most maps, they're a city, like we see here, or like a grasslands area. Presumably something suitable for farming. Let's see. Supplies, right up here in the province. That's how much food is available, right? So your army actually eats a certain amount of supplies every turn. And you can see that here in your supply usage. I have negative 103 because of my pretender. He gives a lot of supplies, so we have a surplus. But if you don't have enough supplies in the province, your army will start starving and they will become diseased and die. which is pretty bad since it affects a large number of units in your entire army. So most of the time, it's something you can ignore, but you need to pay attention to this when you're moving through provinces, because sometimes you can run into a province with really bad scales, bad death scales. It puts a huge penalty on supplies. If you're moving an army of like 500 guys through, it can be a problem. So it's not a totally useless stat. It's worth paying attention to. Income is very important. It's just how much gold the province gives you every turn, but it's so important, of course, because you need gold for everything. Population up here. Population is a important stat for a variety of reasons. It determines how much income the province is going to give you. I believe it affects resources as well. It determines how good the province is going to be for blood hunting, which is a whole different topic, but you want to know how much population a province has, because if it has like 2,000, blood hunting isn't very useful, but if it has 8,000, blood hunting there will be great. Unrest is also something you want to know about. Having unrest above 0 reduces your income in this province, and you want to keep your unrest as low as possible, preferably at 0 all the time. And it'll also clue you in to certain effects that may be going on in a province. We can't see the unrest in these provinces because we don't control them. We don't have scouts there. But if I controlled one of these provinces, and I saw I had like 56 unrest, and it was going up every turn. There are a lot of random events in the game that generate unrest over time, and if you patrol, you'll find like a great boar that's been terrorizing your population and causing unrest, and you'll get rid of that, and your unrest will go down. So it's something that's good to pay attention to, because it can clue you into other effects that are happening in that province, some of which do not have notifications, or you might easily miss a notification for them. Let's see, defense. Yes, this is the province defense window. This is important because these are the militia that defend your provinces. Typically, you'll only be putting one province defense on any province you control. Your capital starts with 25, though, and sometimes you'll want to put more on a capital. So I can toggle up the province defense here, and the number 34, right? That means that if I click it up, it's going to cost 34 gold to purchase my next point. Or maybe it's 35 gold, like the cost of the next point, like your current point plus 1 is the cost of the next point. Doesn't make a big difference either way, but as you can see, increasing it from 0 to 35 would be very expensive, although going up just one more point isn't that big of a deal. The higher it goes, as it goes higher, past 20 in particular, you start getting more bang for your buck per point of province defense that you add. And province defense, when these units die, if your province is not captured at the end of the turn, they all come back and they're ready for the next fight. So they can be a very useful force to have alongside a real army, because province defense is often easily killed on their own, but they can be a very good force to like bolster a real army with mages and whatnot if you really need to defend a point. And you will need to you can also move these up and down with your arrow keys on your keyboard, by the way. Very much easier than clicking a whole lot if you want to put a lot of province defense on some point. It's very important to know that mostly when you're expanding, because you need to put 1 point of province defense in every province you capture. This is because if you don't, enemy players can capture those provinces away from you with scouts. This isn't very damaging. You're not going to be able to keep hold of the provinces very easily. But you lose income from those provinces that they capture back from you until you send over units to capture it. And if you send, say, a scout over to capture it, and they've actually put a point of province defense on it, you can't. You have to actually send some troops over to capture it. I have messed with other players pretty significantly when they've forgotten to put a single point of province defense in their provinces. One time I captured a province right next to some guy's capital with a scout. And then I had a lot of money at the time, and I thought this would be kind of funny. So I put, 80 province defense on his province right next to his capital. Like, this was a ways into expansion. I had several thousand gold, I think 4 or 5, because I had order and luck scales, and so I could actually afford a huge amount of province defense. And he didn't expect it, and he sent an actual army, like his next expansion force, into that province to like take it on their way out, and they all died. Now that I recall, actually, I think it was a smaller number than that. So, but then after his first force died, I like tripled the number, and he sent another force in, and they died too. And he didn't do very well after that. So it's something to keep in mind. A little bit of a side note from actually talking about the UI. Now, over here we have our nation overview. There's not much to it, right? It's your treasury, your income, your upkeep. The time of year is what this is up here. Look down in the tooltip. And the gems you have. If we click on the gems, this goes to our magical resource treasury. And it has all the magical gems we could potentially get. You can give gems to commanders. If you click pool gems, it doesn't do anything right now because we don't have any commanders with magical gems. But what this does is that if you have commanders with magic gems that are standing on laboratories, you need to be at a laboratory to take out or put in gems, and you click pool, it will take all the gems away from your commanders and put them back in the treasury. It's not useful very often unless you're a blood nation, but it can save you a lot of clicking to know that. And this just gives you, of course, a quick overview of what magical gems you actually have. Your upkeep refers to the gold cost of your military units every turn. Your treasury is, of course, the amount of money you currently have, and your income is how much you get every turn before your upkeep is accounted for. It's your total income, not your net income. So be aware of that. Let's see. Before we talk about all the different useful options on the side of the screen, let's talk about provinces themselves and the map UI, right? Oh, I should actually talk about the units on the side here. The army. This is kind of like the army selection screen. You select commanders who are leading troops, rather. The army selection screen is technically this over here. So these are the commanders you have in a given province. Over here I have no commanders, so they go away, of course. Oh, and this description right here is I'm going to cover this a lot in the expansion video. This is just a rough estimate of how many units might be in the square. It's a sort of a guesstimate where it could be plus or minus, I think, like 50%. So you shouldn't totally trust it, but it gives you an idea of how dangerous this army may be. And this is the kind of information you see when you are looking at player armies as well. So it's good to get used to this very light amount of information you have to go on it. You have to kind of know other nations to guess what kind of troops they're going to have. So on the army screen, this is where I actually select armies, and I can select this guy with left click, and then left click on a province to send him out to it. If I right click, it selects the province. So if I wanted to invade this province, I would, select this guy with left click and click on to this province, and it'll go over there. Pretty straightforward. I guess it confused me a lot when I first started playing because I would always right click to try and go to the province and select it instead, which does not work. You can click on this little command here where it says move, right? Because I clicked over here to tell him to move there, and so that's what he's doing currently. But there's other things that they can do. So he can defend, patrol the province, move, pillage, hide, become a prophet. I could magically empower him, have him blood hunt, construct building, which that means to construct an upgrade or a fort. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of buildings in Dominions 4. There's not a lot of structures in general or upgrades you can build. Essentially, you can build a palisades, a castle, or a fortress. And you can build some upgrades to that, like gate towers and a well and some other things. The upgrades pretty much just add some features to your castle when someone is assaulting it after breaking down your gate in a siege, or it will add more supplies to it so it can withstand a siege for a longer period of time. Either withstand it by increasing the strength of your walls or by increasing your supplies so you don't starve as quickly. Or it can, roads. Roads have one unique effect, which is that they negate the penalties for moving over forests if you build roads. I think only castles can build roads. Palisades can't build a lot of the fancy upgrades. You can also build temples and labs with, I think you, instead of the demolish fort, demolish lab, you get like a build temple, build lab instead, or maybe it's under construct building, I forget. But it'll be pretty self-apparent if you go and try and do it. Going up the list, Blood Hunt causes you to look for blood slaves in the province. Blood slaves are sort of the blood magic equivalent to the gems of the other magic paths. They work a little bit differently, mostly in the quantities you use and how you get them. Blood hunting with a commander that does not have access to blood magic or the special ability Blood Searcher is kind of futile. It takes a lot of turns to get lucky, and a lot of commanders searching a province for blood slaves who don't have that ability for you to actually get any. This is intentional because you could break into blood magic very easily if it wasn't so hard to do without an actual blood mage. But if you are playing a nation with blood mages, you're going to need to use this ability, and I'll probably have to make a whole different tutorial on efficiently blood hunting. If you click on Empowerment, this goes to the Empowerment screen, and you can raise a regular unit up to some level in a magic path by spending gems. This is actually a very, very expensive process. I believe going from path 1 to path 2 is a little cheaper than going from 0 to 1. So raising a mage up from 1 to 2 to break into some magic path that you otherwise wouldn't get to in can be viable on occasion. Usually you only do this if for some strange reason you happen into a huge amount of gems that your nation can't use, and so eventually you have no other choice than to spend some of them empowering a mage so that he can use them for something in the future, once you've accumulated even more. Alright, let's go back here. Creating a prophet with the Become Prophet command gives your unit Priest 3, or if they're already Priest 3, it gives them Priest 4, and they can do various prophetish things. I talk about this in my expansion video in a little more detail. You can hide with certain units, units that have Stealthy, as we see here, and that prevents them from showing up to enemy scouts. So, like when I click here, right, I see the graphic for these Horse Tribe Cavalry on the map, and I can see this description. There's 20 Horse Tribe Cavalry, mainly Horse Tribe Cavalry anyway, in this province. Well, if they all had stealth and they were all hiding, I would just see nothing instead. Or if there was a mixture of units, right, and some of them hid, I had some of them with a stealthy commander and I had them all hide. You do need a stealthy commander to hide stealthy units. If you have an unstealthy commander and stealthy units, the units don't hide. I think maybe glamored units don't show up like this, even when they're led by an unstealthy commander, but don't quote me on that. So that's what stealth is good for mostly. You can also move through enemy territory undetected as well, if they aren't patrolling too much for you. That would be a whole nother conversation again about stealth mechanics. This game has a lot of mechanics that could do with a decent bit of discussion. Let's see, we also have pillage. You kill some of the population in the province and get some gold. Pretty simple. It could in theory be good for trashing enemies' provinces that you don't intend to keep control of. In practice, it's a fairly weak ability, and even on units that get a special pillage bonus, it's not too useful. You might find a use for it though. Move is pretty obvious. I can click on this and it says hold down control. Oh, it just tells me what to do. I didn't even realize, I've never actually tried to do that. Huh, what do you know? So, that does remind me of something I'm going to need to show you in a second. Patrol province, that will just have them patrol the province, right? What patrolling the province does is your unit spends the turn decreasing unrest, and if there is a sneaking unit in this province, they will team up with my province defense if they give any patrol strength, and they will have a chance to discover that sneaking unit, and the chance is going to be really low unless I have more units than the sneaking unit's stealth score, which for this guy is 50. That's a rough look at how that works and why you would patrol a province. Defend is the just do nothing command. They sit here, they don't do anything. There is one other thing you should know about patrolling. If you're patrolling at a fort, then your units are considered to be outside the fort. If someone attacks that fort, then you will fight with the province defense against the attacking force. But if you're defending, you'll be inside the fort, and the attacking force will fight the province defense and not the units that are defending. Similarly, if you have a mixture of patrolling and non-patrolling units, the units that are defending or researching or something inside the fort will stay inside the fort, and the units that are patrolling will fight. Alright, so we've covered the left side of the screen. I think now is indeed a good time to move on to the map. There's not too much to talk about here. I can zoom out with my mouse wheel and see the whole map. This is a horizontal wrap map. Mostly, I would encourage you to play only maps that are that wrap in all directions. This map is particularly nice though, and since there's no option for anything other than a horizontal wrap with it, you take what you can get, right? So each of these little tiles, I guess you could call, I mean, in Dominion's terms, they're called provinces. These are provinces that are inside of these red borders here, right? They go through the ocean as well. And so if you select one of these with right click, you'll see these yellow lines moving out to other provinces that are adjacent. And these are the lines you can move along if you want to move from one province to another. So for example, I can move to any of these provinces that are connected to my primary province. So there's two different types of lines you can have besides the yellow ones. There's these orangish ones here. See how it's kind of faded and it'll wash through? It'll become solid if the mountain is passable. Right now, the mountain is impassable because there isn't a heat 1 scale on both sides of the mountain. That represents like the mountain passes the snow and the melting enough for you to be able to cross over the mountains without freezing to death. If your unit has mountain survival, you can ignore this penalty and cross over the mountain. Now, let's see if we have, here we go. So this is an area where the path crosses over water somewhat. It doesn't go into the water, but it crosses over it, and so it's a blue. It would be solid if there were cold scales on both sides, representing the water having frozen over to the point where you can march an army over it. Or if your units were amphibious, meaning units that could successfully swim through whatever, or ford whatever river was in the way, right? Flying units, likewise, can ignore these distinctions as long as the province they end up in is indeed on land, assuming that they do need to breathe air. I don't think there are any natively flying units that are amphibious as well offhand, but you can make them that way. You can by giving them water breathing if you desire. Now, let's see. The numpad, or the regular numbers, although no, I find the numpad pretty convenient, can control the UI on the battlefield map to a degree. So let's look at some of the options, right? So 1 toggles your flags and apparently your forts. I don't mess with it very much. The 2 command toggles showing armies. 3 toggles Dominion candles. 4 toggles province statistics, right? This is Dominion candles, but then the coins, of course, are the income of the province, and the hammer is the resources that the province produces. I don't know if I think I've talked about resources in my previous videos, but you know, this might be very useful to you if you're thinking like, where should I expand for my capital first? Well, a good target would be this province here. They have barbarians, and you don't want to expand into barbarians, but if you think you can handle them, it would be very good because it has a lot of production and it will allow you to build a lot more units out of your capital next turn. 5 toggles showing temples. 6 does... You know, I'm not sure if 6 does something, unfortunately, since I don't have a huge built-up map. I might have to try another game with that. I don't know if 6 does anything. It may very well not. And the rest of the commands... so we've got... What's that, 8? Yeah, 8 shows the... toggle showing the connections between provinces. I would probably never turn that option off. 9 shows the names of the provinces. This can get very cluttered, but it gives you a much better idea of, you know, where everything is and what these are called. It's a lot easier to remember the province names, I think, than, oh, that province is on the left. But again, like I mentioned previously, a lot of people don't refer to provinces by their names. I feel like I may be unusual in that regard. Alright, so that pretty much covers the battle UI. There's not a lot to it. It's a little minimalistic. The only, there's something else I could cover. I might have to do it in another video because I don't have it set up in this video. If you are scouting an enemy province and you move your scout to a province that has their province defense in it, there will be a description of what their province defense is like, and that description will tell you roughly how much province defense they have. You know, like if there's only 1 point, it'll actually say like there's a lone unit and his commander. It'll say that for like 1 to 2 points or 3 points or something. And if you have more points, it'll say like, you know, there's like a couple militia, or it's like poorly organized. I can't remember what exactly it says. And I think like for 15 plus, it's like the province defense is well organized, and if it's 20 plus, it says it's well armed and organized and large or something like that. And then it starts getting more crazy descriptions as you go up the province defense numbers. You don't usually see more than 1 to 15 province defense.